Across the heartlands of America, a silent transformation is unfolding beneath the surface of familiar farmland. An animal once domesticated for food has now become one of the nation's most unstoppable ecological forces, growing smarter, spreading faster, and adapting to nearly every environment. Wild hogs are quietly reshaping entire landscapes. Scientists call it one of the most complex wildlife challenges in modern history. And despite decades of control efforts, the problem is only getting bigger. How did this species evolve from barnyard livestock to a nationwide environmental disruptor? Across vast stretches of farmland and forest, an unseen transformation is reshaping the countryside. Once confined to a handful of southern states, wild hogs have now spread across most of the continental U.S., leaving a trail of destruction unlike any other invasive mammal in modern history. What began as a few escaped domestic pigs has evolved into a nationwide ecological crisis, one that scientists, farmers, and wildlife agencies are struggling to contain. Every night, thousands of these animals move silently through fields, uprooting crops, damaging irrigation systems, and erasing entire acres of harvest within hours. Agricultural economists estimate that the total damage linked to feral swine now exceeds $1.5 billion each year in the United States alone. Yet the true cost goes far beyond finances. Eroded soil, destroyed habitats, and collapsing local ecosystems are quietly rewriting the balance of rural environments. Wild hogs are not just survivors. They are master adapters. They thrive in heat or cold, swamps or deserts, farmlands or forests. With an omnivorous diet and near photographic memory, they remember food sources, avoid traps, and adjust behavior in ways that constantly outpace human efforts. Females, called sows, can produce up to 2 litters a year, with each litter averaging 6 or more piglets. At this rate, a single pair of hogs can multiply into dozens within months, and unless more than half the total population is removed annually, their numbers continue to rise exponentially. The challenge began long before the problem was recognized. Centuries ago, early settlers released domestic pigs to roam freely as a food source. Over generations, these animals adapted to the wild, growing larger, tougher, and far more intelligent. Later, new imports from overseas were introduced for sport hunting, adding stronger genetics and aggressive traits. The combination created a super adaptive hybrid, part farm animal, part wilderness survivor, capable of thriving almost anywhere. Today, scientists track wild hog populations from the deep south to the Midwest, from coastal plains to mountain foothills. GPS collar studies reveal just how advanced their social intelligence has become. Family groups, known as sounders, coordinate movement and share learned behavior. When one member experiences danger, a trap, a scent of humans, or even unusual mechanical noise, the entire group adjusts routes, feeding hours and territory boundaries within a single night. It's as if they are collectively rewriting their survival code in real time. Government agencies have invested heavily in solutions: aerial hunts, bait stations, fertility control research, and corral traps designed to capture entire groups at once. Yet, despite decades of funding, these measures rarely achieve lasting impact. Many farmers unknowingly worsen the situation by deploying traps too early, alerting the animals before full capture is possible. Each failed attempt teaches the group to associate human scent or metal enclosures with danger, ensuring future avoidance. What was once a hunting challenge has become a psychological chess match between humans and one of nature's fastest learning mammals. Studies from major agricultural universities highlight that wild hogs possess remarkable cognitive ability for a non-primate species. They can recognize human patterns, detect electrical signals from trail cameras, and differentiate between safe and unsafe feeding areas after only one encounter. Their hearing surpasses that of deer, and their sense of smell rivals trained detection dogs. Combined with physical strength, capable of overturning fences and digging through compacted soil, they are perfectly equipped to resist control. Some of the most effective containment strategies now rely less on brute force and more on behavioral science. Experts recommend large, circular steel traps at least 10 meters wide, big enough to contain an entire group once triggered remotely. The use of live feed cameras connected to mobile apps allows operators to monitor activity and close gates only when most of the sounder is inside. This reduces the number of escaped individuals who would otherwise learn to avoid future attempts. Another key insight involves patience. Pre-baiting, leaving feed near a trap for several consecutive nights without triggering it, builds trust among the animals. Researchers found that sites baited for a week before activation have triple the success rate compared to rush setups. Fermented grains, overripe fruit, or high-protein pellets tend to be the most irresistible attractants. Timing also matters. Wild hogs prefer feeding just before dawn and after dusk, when human presence is least likely. Despite such precision strategies, most control programs still struggle with consistency. The problem is scale. With populations spread across more than 40 states and expanding by thousands weekly, even localized success barely dents the overall growth curve. Each region faces its own obstacles. Wetlands limit access for trappers. Dense woodlands conceal movement, and urban sprawl provides food waste and shelter near city outskirts. In some states, hog sightings have been reported within miles of suburban neighborhoods, raising new concerns about vehicle collisions and disease transmission to livestock. Beyond immediate economic loss, the ecological toll continues to mount. Wild hogs dig through soil layers in search of roots and insects, disturbing native vegetation and accelerating erosion. They consume ground-nesting bird eggs, reptiles, and even small mammals, creating cascading effects across food chains. In certain wetlands, their rooting has altered water flow patterns, transforming plant communities and threatening endangered species. Each ecosystem reacts differently, but the underlying theme remains constant: imbalance. Scientists warn that eradication may no longer be realistic. Instead, the focus is shifting toward containment and coexistence, supported by smarter land management and data-driven intervention. Drone surveillance, infrared imaging, and artificial intelligence are now being integrated to track movement across landscapes. Some pilot projects test fertility control compounds to limit reproduction without widespread poisoning. However, these technologies face regulatory hurdles and ethical debates about their long-term ecological effects. While progress exists in isolated regions, the broader battle resembles an arms race. As technology improves, so does the hog's ability to adapt. Populations displaced by hunting simply migrate elsewhere. Sounders split and regroup, forming smaller, stealthier clusters. Each adaptation challenges the previous method, creating a continuous cycle of pursuit and resistance. The situation echoes one uncomfortable truth in wildlife management: intelligence and survival instinct, once unleashed, rarely regress. For the farmers living with the consequences, the issue is personal. Night after night, camera footage shows fields plowed into chaos, seedlings uprooted, and irrigation lines shredded like paper. Insurance seldom covers the damage. Repairs take weeks, sometimes months. And even after clearing a group, neighboring populations often recolonize the area within weeks. To them, the fight feels endless, a moving shadow that can never be fully caught. Ecologists now describe wild hogs as a superspecies, not because of their strength or aggression, but because of their unmatched ability to learn and exploit human behavior. In many ways, the invasion is less a story about animals taking over land and more about how ecosystems respond to opportunity. Wherever humans create open ground, water access, and excess food, the hogs follow. They are, unintentionally, thriving on the very systems built to sustain modern agriculture. Looking ahead, experts argue that lasting control depends on cooperation rather than competition. Neighboring landowners must synchronize trapping schedules and share data to prevent displaced herds from simply crossing property lines. States must coordinate beyond boundaries to standardize monitoring and resource sharing. And the public must understand that this crisis isn't confined to distant farmland. It's a national environmental challenge growing quietly beneath our feet. If the pattern continues unchecked, the United States could host more than 10 million wild hogs before the decade ends. With every generation adapting faster, the margin for error shrinks. Yet, within this daunting problem lies a valuable lesson about evolution, intelligence, and resilience. Nature, when underestimated, finds a way to balance itself, even if that balance no longer favors as thought. So while scientists and farmers continue searching for solutions, one fact remains clear. The wild hog is no longer simply an agricultural pest. It is a living symbol of how human intervention can unintentionally rewrite the rules of nature, and how regaining control may depend not on force, but on learning to think just as strategically as the creatures we're trying to stop.